here. I'm a lead technical consultant at Digital Carbon, a managed service provider. Today we're going to be discussing connectivity into China. More particular, how to connect our remote locations, which are located within China, to the rest of our global wide area network. We are also going to present a solution which we provide to our customers, and it's in partnership together with our vendors VMware VeloCloud and also Microsoft Azure. So why is it so difficult to connect to our locations in China today? Well, there's a number of challenges which we find if we want to set up maybe an MPLS connection or a IPsec VPN connection. Basically, it's due to the Chinese cybersecurity law, which is enforced by a filtering system. We also know this filtering system as the Great Firewall of China. So if we have our locations in China, these can be factories, these can be offices. Usually we have them connected to a telco provider or an internet service provider, where all international traffic is then actually sent through the Great Firewall of China onto the global internet. Because of the filtering system that the Great Firewall does, it dramatically slows down our connections. We get high latency, we get packet loss, and even if you are using VPNs, then the traffic can be completely cut off. And it's basically unreliable, especially for the enterprise systems which we use today. Our solution is actually based on redirecting that traffic. Instead of going directly to the global internet, we redirect it to one of the special administration zones, more particular Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, we find all of our major cloud providers, including Microsoft Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. All of our traffic now, which travels from our offices, from our factories to Hong Kong, then it also gets filtered, but it does not have the full force of the firewall for international traffic. So we see that latency is a lot higher, a lot shorter. Also, we don't get so much packet loss or any packet loss at all. And it's quite reliable, actually, the connectivity. So how do we actually do this? Well, in this particular example, we're going to be discussing or utilizing Microsoft Azure network. We basically install SD-WAN edges within our remote locations, within our offices, within our factories. We also connect to the local internet providers. We also work here with the internet providers which have the internet content provider licenses, which is very important. There's a number of providers which have this license, and it basically allows us to have that connectivity to Microsoft Azure or to any of the other cloud providers that the content is allowed to actually go through, or the traffic is allowed to actually go through. So once we actually have that internet connectivity and we have our SD-WAN edges installed in our remote sites, then we also basically deploy a virtual SD-WAN edge within our Microsoft Azure environment, and this is within the Hong Kong region. From there, our SD-WAN edges will automatically create an overlay tunnel from the remote locations to our virtual edge, which is within the cloud provider's network. From there, we are also then able to use, for example, Microsoft's backbone network to backhaul traffic anywhere in the world. And these networks are the most optimal networks, the lowest latency, and also very redundant connectivity. So the connectivity going over the backbone networks of cloud providers is a lot more higher quality compared to unreliable internet connectivity, which is also being filtered by the Great Firewall. So this is the use case we're going to actually explain how to configure and how to set up. For example, on the left hand side, we have our remote sites, which can be found in Europe, for example. These can be our offices, These can be our data centers or even our remote workers, which are working from home or a coffee shop. All of these locations, usually within the offices and the data centers, we have our physical SD-WAN edges installed. For our remote workers, if it's a home worker, we can also have a physical SD-WAN edge installed, but we also are able to install SD-WAN clients onto the endpoint devices. From the SD-WAN edges, then we have our overlay tunnels, which are connecting back to our virtual edge, which is deployed within the cloud provider's backbone. For example, for Microsoft Azure, we will be utilizing the UK South region, which is London, basically. And so this will be our SD-WAN European hub. On the other side of the world, we have our remote sites. Also, same setup, we have our offices and we have our factories. These can be located or are located within China. We simply ship out the SD-WAN edges, and again, we deploy a virtual SD-WAN edge within the cloud environments, the same cloud provider as in London. So here we'll be utilizing Microsoft Azure East Asia region, which is basically Hong Kong. And we will be configuring that as our hub site. So all of our remote sites have connectivity, SD-WAN connectivity back to our remote hub in Hong Kong. And then from there, we can basically interconnect those two hub sites using the underlying Microsoft network, which, like I mentioned, is very optimal and optimized connectivity, reliable with a very low latency. So we're going to start basically with this scenario. Let's say we have a remote site which is located in London. Let's say this is our data center. We have a server which is within this data center, and we also have our SD-WAN edge which has already been pre-deployed within this data center. On the other side of the world, we have our factory, which is located in Shanghai. The factory also has a server or a computer located, and also we have pre-deployed our SD-WAN edge. Now we basically need to connect our two servers together. So we're going to go through an example of the connectivity and the configurations, how to actually get this set up and these two servers connected over Microsoft's backbone network. So we're going to go into our orchestrator. So here we will log in. And here we can see from the dashboard that we have our two locations, which is one data center edge and our edge in Shanghai. They are not interconnected today. So if we actually have a look a little bit more into the configuration of these edges, or actually have a look at the map, let's say where we are. So here we can see that we have our edge in London in our data center, and we have our second edge, which is our factory, which is actually in Shanghai. In theory, we can interconnect those together using the SD-WAN, but the connectivity would actually be traveling through the Great Firewall, and that connectivity would be unreliable, could have packet loss, and it would be very high in regards to latency. This would be the same as an IPsec VPN tunnel, basically being filtered, which we want to basically overcome. And the way we're going to overcome it is, like I mentioned, we're going to connect these to Microsoft's Azure backbone and basically travel through the backbone instead of through the internet, also bypassing the Great Firewall of China. So what we actually need to do now, if we go back to our diagram, the next part is basically to deploy our SD-WAN hub sites, one in UK South and the other one in East Asia within Hong Kong. Once these are deployed, we will then get our SD-WAN remote sites connected to our hub sites through the overlay tunnel. So let's go and do this. So to start off, we first need to deploy our virtual edges within our cloud environments. These are going to be our hub sites, one in London and the other one in Hong Kong. How do we do this? Well, first we need to actually log into our orchestrator. We need to go under the configurations tab within the orchestrator, and we need to add our new virtual edges. We'll click on add edges. Let's give it a name. We'll select which model it's going to be. This is going to be a virtual edge because it's not a physical edge. And we also need to give it a profile. A profile is a template of configurations which the edge will actually pull and pre-deploy itself. I already created a number of profiles for this and have created a profile for the London hub site, which I named it Cloud Hub London Profile. So we're going to select that. We are also going to assign it a license. And that's all we need to actually do. So we're going to add that edge. Once that edge has been added, we actually get a activation key, which I'm going to actually copy, as we need to actually use it to activate the edge within Azure. Now if we log into our Microsoft Azure console, we are going to deploy this new edge within the environment. So the way and the easiest way to actually deploy a virtual edge within Azure is to use a custom templates. Custom templates is a template, also pre-defined configurations, which are automatically assigned within Microsoft Azure to bring up the actual virtual edge. So we're going to actually upload a template which I pre-configured. We pre-configure these templates for all of our customers to actually customize it for their environment. So here we're going to actually select the London Hub template, save that template. Here we have a number of options which we need to actually just to update. Most importantly is the resource group. So the resource groups also defines which region this virtual edge is actually going to be deployed. So we're going to select our London resource group. Here we can see the region is assigned as UK South, which is London. And additionally, we need to actually update the activation key, which we copied from the orchestrator. And also give a name for the SSH key, just in case if we need to actually log into the virtual edge for any troubleshooting. The rest of the configurations, including the VNet names, IP addressing, that has all been pre-populated from the template which was predefined already. Next, we're going to just check if everything is compliant, and we're going to actually create this this virtual edge. Just download the key. And now we can see that this virtual edge is actually being deployed within the London Azure site. While that's being actually deployed, we're going to create our second site, or our second hub site in Hong Kong. So again, we're going to go back to our orchestrator. click on edges, add a new edge, and this is going to be our Azure Hong Kong hub site. Again, we're going to need to select the model, which is our virtual edge. Within the profiles, again, we predefined the profiles or the template for this edge, which is going to be the Cloud Hub Hong Kong profile. We need to assign it the correct licensing. And click on next. And to add the edge. That edge has now been added to the orchestrator. It has generated a activation key, which we are going to copy and go back to our Microsoft Azure console. Again, we're going to now go to our deploy a custom template. We're going to upload the predefined template, which I pre-configured already, which is going to be the Hong Kong hub template. We're going to just save that. And this time we're going to select our Hong Kong resource group. You can see that the region has now been assigned as Asia Pacific East Asia, which is Hong Kong. We need to just update the license key and add a name for the SSH key. Click next. Microsoft's going to just do all of its checks. If it's all up, then we are actually going to create that virtual edge. And we can now see that the deployment is in progress. We need to give it a few minutes, basically for that deployment to finish. Once the actual virtual edge is deployed, it will automatically connect to the SD-WAN orchestrator. It's going to pull down its configurations, update its software, and then basically restart. Once it's all restarted, if we go back to our SD-WAN orchestrator and under the monitoring tab, we should see our SD-WAN edges connected. Here we can see that our Azure London hub site is already up and connected. We just now need to wait for our Hong Kong site also to connect. While that's going to be deployed and connect itself, we just need to update the IP address, the LAN IP address for the Azure London site. So we're just going to go back into the configurations tab, choose our Azure London site edge. Under the interfaces configurations, we can see that there is a little triangle saying basically we need to assign an IP address for this interface. As it is a static IP address, so here we'll assign it a 10.2.1.10/24 address. No need for any gateway, so we're just going to save those configurations. And now we need to do the same for our Hong Kong site. So back to the edges, list of edges. And just make sure that was configurations were saved. So our Azure Hong Kong site, hub site, interfaces, Geek E2, which is our LAN IP address. And here we're going to assign it a 10.1.1.10 address /24. Save that configurations. Wait for those configurations just to be saved and committed. Once that has been done, let's return back to our monitoring tab and to check if our our hub edges have been turned up and connected. We can now see that the Azure Hong Kong hub site is actually showing up within the orchestrator. It's actually offline at the moment. Basically, it's being restarted at the moment. So it's actually connected to the orchestrator. It had pulled down all its configurations. It has pulled down its the latest software, and now it's basically restarting. As it restarts, let's have a look. A remote desktop for our London site. So this is our London server. If we go back to our diagram, we have a server within our data center, and that server is connected to our virtual edge within the data center. And then the plan is basically for that data center or that server within the data center in London to have connectivity to our server, which is in Shanghai. So let's go back to our remote desktop. This is the Windows server in our London data center. Let's just confirm that we still don't have connectivity to Shanghai server. So the IP address was 10.86.1.243. Here we can actually see that the pings are being timed out. Because we don't have that connectivity all the way from our server in London to our server in Shanghai. We're going to just make sure we have connectivity to our local SD-WAN edge, which is an IP address of 10.44.0.230. Here we can see we are getting replies. And now the next hop should be our SD-WAN edge within Microsoft Azure London site, so our hub site within Europe. That had the IP address which we just assigned was 10.2.1.10. And we can actually see that we don't have the connectivity from our London data center to our Azure hub site in London. So we're going to go back to our orchestrator. We're going to just refresh the screen, and we can see that our Azure Hong Kong site is up and connected. So what we need to now need to do is that our server within our London data center has connectivity to our SD-WAN edge within the data center, but it has not got connectivity to our SD-WAN edge within Azure. So this overlay tunnel. So this is what we're going to actually work on. During During this time, we will also activate the tunnel within our edge, within our Shanghai factory, to our edge, which is in Hong Kong, in Azure. And the way we do this is within the orchestrator, under the configurations tab, we are going to go to our profiles, select our data center file, which is our SD-WAN edge within our data center assigned to it. Here we need to actually enable our cloud VPN. This is the overlay network basically. So here we are enabling the overlay network for all of the edges which are under this profile. We want to allow this edge to connect to a hub site which is in Azure. So enable branch to hubs. And here we need to actually select which hub site we want to have that permanent overlay tunnel connected. We're going to select our London hub site. We're going to update that. And additionally, we want for our branch sites within our data center to use the hub site in London to connect to other sites within the network. For example, to our Shanghai site all the way in China. So this is where we actually need to enable branch to branch connectivity. We want to actually select that to use a hub site for the branch to branch connectivity. And the branch site which we're going to use or transit is actually going to be our London hub site. So any connectivity from our branch site or from our data center within London to connect to our sites in China, the traffic will actually be transmitted transit to our site in Azure. So we're just going to save those configurations. And we need to basically do the same for our Chinese sites. So back to configurations. Select our profiles and select the profile which is actually connected to our branch sites in Hong Kong, in China. So Chinese branch sites, we only have one branch site, which is our Shanghai site. We want to enable the SD-WAN overlay network. We want to allow the branch sites in Shanghai to connect to our hub sites in Hong Kong. Update. And additionally, allow that site in Shanghai to use the hub site for connectivity to other sites, SD-WAN sites around the world, and needs to basically transit the hub site in Hong Kong for that connectivity. Save all of the configurations. So now, if we go back to our diagram, we should have our SD-WAN network set up for local in-region connectivity. So our server, which is located in the data center, has connectivity to our SD-WAN edge within the same location, our data center. And from that site, from that edge, the overlay tunnel should be now built to the SD-WAN virtual edge, which is found within Microsoft Azure UK South region. And on the other side of the world, we have our edge located within our factory and our server in Shanghai. And we have an overlay tunnel from our edge in Shanghai to our virtual edge, which is located in Microsoft Azure Hong Kong East Asia region. And we're just going to check this connectivity. So let's try to ping from our server in London to our virtual edge, which is located in UK South. This was 10.2.1.10. We actually can see that now we have connectivity. So from our London data center all the way to our London virtual edge hub site, there is connectivity. But if we still try to ping our server within Shanghai, which was the 10.86.1.243 IP address, we still get timeout. That's because we still have not connected our virtual edge within Azure to our virtual edge in Hong Kong. We are still not utilizing that underlying Microsoft network, which we're going to actually configure next. So if we actually go back to our little diagram, we see we have connectivity from our server within our London data center to our edge in the data center, and also to the edge within our London hub within Azure. The same should be on the other end, which we can actually do a test. So here we have our Shanghai server. We are actually going to try to ping our local SD-WAN edge, which is 10.86.1.78. Here we have connectivity, and we are also going to try to ping our SD-WAN edge, which is in Hong Kong, which we also have connectivity. So the next step in the whole process is to connect our SD-WAN European hub in London to our SD-WAN Hong Kong hub in China. And to do this, we are actually going to utilize the Microsoft Azure Virtual WAN, the underlying connectivity between these two sites. So we're not going to even use the normal internet. We're actually going to use this private network of Microsoft to actually connect or interconnect from London all the way to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong onto Shanghai. How do we do this? Well, it's pretty simple. If we go back to our Microsoft Azure console, one thing which we need to actually double check, and it should be already configured from our custom templates. If we check our virtual edges, so first we will double check our virtual edge in London. Make sure the public IP address which is actually being used under the properties tab. So the actual routing preferences for that IP address is to use the Microsoft network. There's an option which is either to use the Microsoft network or to use the public internet. Here we want to use the Microsoft network, so we don't want the traffic to go out onto the internet, because then it will start going through the firewall again. So here we want to use the underlying Microsoft network from that connectivity from Hong Kong to London. We're going to just double check the same configurations within our virtual edge in Hong Kong, make sure our public IP address is actually being routed over the Microsoft network, which it is. So now we will go back to our SD-WAN orchestrator, and we're going to interconnect the two hub sites together. The way we do this is under the configurations tab, we will select or do the configurations under the actual profiles. So under the profiles, we will select our Cloud Hub London site, which is our Azure site. We can see that the overlay network is already enabled. And here we actually want to have branch to hub site permanent connectivity, because we want to have this permanent overlay tunnel between the two hub sites. So we're going to enable that. And we want to connect London to Hong Kong. So here we will select Hong Kong. We're going to update that. And another very important configurations is the actual interconnection. So here we have an option where we have hub to cluster interconnect. So to connect two hubs together, and we just need to make sure that is enabled. We're going to save those configurations. And also do the same setup on the Hong Kong side. So now we're going to go to our Hong Kong profile, which is our Cloud Hub Hong Kong profile. Under the Cloud VPN, again, we want to enable connectivity, a permanent tunnel connectivity from Hong Kong now to London. So here we're going to choose our Azure London hub site. Update hubs. And again, we want to make sure we have the hub to hub or hub to cluster interconnect enabled, allowing that connectivity between the two hubs. And because of Microsoft Azure routing policy, it will actually use the underlying network instead of the public internet. So we're just going to save those settings. Those settings are now saved. So what we have actually enabled now is this overlay tunnel. So we have our hub site in UK South, and we have our hub site in East Asia, and we have the overlay tunnel between those two hub sites. Additionally, we have our branch to hub site tunnel from our London data center, and also from our mainline China in Shanghai SD-WAN edge to our branch to hub site connectivity. And from now, we should have connectivity all the way through from our London data center, all the way through to our site in Shanghai. So now we're going to actually try to ping all the way through from our server in London, through our cloud hub site in London, through the underlying Microsoft network to our Hong Kong hub site, and from our hub site in Hong Kong to our site in Shanghai. So let's return back to our server in London, and we will try to ping all the way through. This is pinging to the server in Shanghai, which is 10.86.1.243. there we go. We have full connectivity, and the pings are responding. We can also see that the round trip delay is around 190 milliseconds, which is actually using the underlying Microsoft network, which is pretty good and without any packet loss. Let's try our server in Shanghai. So here we have our server in Shanghai. The same thing, we're going to ping all the way through from Shanghai to our London server, which is ping.10.44.0.99. And the same thing, our pings are being responded. We have full connectivity, and the milliseconds from London to Shanghai is around 190 milliseconds. We can also even try to, let's say from our London data center, try to remote desktop. So from our London data center, from our London data center, from our server in London, we're going to actually try to create a remote desktop connection all the way to our server in Shanghai. So the IP address again is 10.86.1.243. Connect. There we go. We have a connection. Password. Need to put. There we go. Yes, we want to accept the certificates. And we have a remote desktop all the way. It disconnected me from my desktop, from my direct desktop. And here we are actually connected, or we have our remote desktop here from our London data center, where we can then also start doing the same pings. Let's say to ping all the way back to London, same thing, 190 milliseconds from Shanghai to London, which is good. We're gonna close this remote desktop, return back to our London desktop, and we see we have full connectivity. If we also have a look at our orchestrator, we can see if all the tunnels are actually connected. So under the monitoring tab, if we actually choose our London data center edge, if under the paths, we actually can see here we have our connectivity to our London site. So this is actually going to Azure London Hub site. And then if we actually go to our Azure Hub London Hub site, again, under the paths, the overlay tunnels, we can actually see that we have the same connectivity to our branch site, which is our London data center. But additionally, we have an overlay tunnel going to our Azure Hong Kong site, which is actually the Microsoft underlying network. So we have full connectivity from London all the way to Shanghai. As shown, it's around 190 milliseconds. Take a few 1 or 2 milliseconds here and there. If you would like to learn more about the solution, then I invite you to download our full solution brief, which is a white paper, Riding the Cloud into China. You can see the link here to our website where you can download the free white paper, or also I'm going to add the link to the notes for the video as well. If there is anything you would like to ask me, I'm available on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn/Mark Bursky. Also our company website. Also you can send us a meeting invite. If you just click on the discovery, schedule a discovery call on our website, then you'll be able to also schedule a meeting with me. And we can also discuss your requirements, how to connect your remote sites all the way to China bypassing the Great Firewall, giving you better connectivity, higher quality connectivity at a fraction of a cost of a private MPLS connection. Thank you and goodbye.